Hey friend, how's it going? So the iPhone 15 just came out about a week ago, and for a lot of you, you are coming from older iPhones. So I kind of wanted to take a look at the question of the iPhone 11 compared to the iPhone 15 Pro. What's the big differences? And really, if you're coming from an older iPhone, should you upgrade? Because I think that's the big question that every year that the new iPhones come around, that's the big question is, should I upgrade from what I had previously? So let's take a look. So very likely, most of you that are upgrading this year are not going to be upgrading from the 14. You're going to be upgrading from the 13, 12, maybe even 11, or even as old as the 10s, or maybe even, I've seen a few people on Reddit that are upgrading from the 10 this year. So what are kind of the big differences between, for me in my instance, I'm going from the 11. What's the big difference between the 11 and the 15 Pro? Now, one quick thing is, yes, I'm going from the regular 11 to the 15 Pro. So there is definitely a few key big upgrades, but since the iPhone 15, the regular this year, has a lot of the similarities as the 15 Pro, I think for the most part, most of the things that I'm going to talk about are going to be the exact same if you're going from the 15 or the 11, I should say, to the 15. So what are kind of the big differences? I think first off, just from build quality, one of the big differences you're going to notice right away is just the design of the phone. For instance, the bezels. This was definitely one of the biggest things that I noticed when I first got this new 15 was, oh my goodness, the size of this phone, which interestingly enough, let me tell you this. If you have the 11 and you put a case on it, this is about the same footprint physical size as the 15 Pro Max. The physical size, which, gosh, this looks comical now compared to, like you look at the screen, the physical size of this is just about the exact same as the 14 Pro Max, or the 15 Pro Max, I should say, because you got the bezel, and then because the phone's rounded, you've got the extra bit on the outside, and then the top and the bottom. So my wife has the 15 Pro Max or the 14 Pro Max, and hers is barely taller, but it's the same width as this. So if you are upgrading from one of the older ones, the bezels and the size of the phone itself is a lot smaller, which I think is actually great. So if you do like a little bit of a smaller phone, I think that's quite a great touch because there's just less phone around the screen. The screen size is the exact same, but there's just a lot less phone around it, which I think is really nice. Also, a really big upgrade in terms of design is now you've got the flat edges versus the rounded edges like I was just talking about. And to be honest, the titanium on this 15 Pro does feel really good. I know that the 15 has the rounded edges, and in the hand, it just feels really nice. I really like the feel of this. I want to go no case, but I also don't want to buy a new phone here because I just shattered it and dropped it on the floor. But it's very tempting to want to make this like a no case phone, but I don't know if I'm ready to take that leap because I'm not going to be buying a new iPhone next year. So another really big difference between these two is just the screen itself. One, the screen gets brighter on the new models and the screen is dimmer, that sort of stuff. But the big thing, I think, is the high refresh rate. And I'll kind of show a few videos and I'll find a way to kind of make this really noticeable, which I think people, for the most part, if you've been watching iPhone stuff for a while, the high refresh or ProMotion display has been around for a couple years, so there's a lot of videos on YouTube, but in case you haven't seen those, I'll try to do my best to find a way to make a video that shows kind of the difference, but it's so crazy just right now scrolling on these. Like, this just feels like it's lagging so hard because the screen just is noticeably less responsive in a sense because of that high refresh. So that's a big difference between the two. And you've got the dynamic island versus the notch. And you know, so I've had the 15 Pro for a week, and I've noticed the dynamic island's really, it's useful in a lot of interesting specific scenarios. It's nice to kind of keep some things tucked away from the screen so it's not like this whole notification popping up, but it's helpful. I don't know that it's the most innovative thing I've ever seen in my life, but I think it's pretty cool. I think, to be honest, I think it's better than the notch. I prefer the dynamic island because there's something that's being done with it. But it's kind of personal preference, but also at the same time, Apple's going to keep doing the dynamic island, so it kind of doesn't matter whether I like it or not. They're going to keep it, and they're going to keep going with it, so kind of whatever. But the ProMotion display and the brighter display, definitely, I think it's a huge difference, and I think it's very noticeable. So then another really obvious difference between the two is these guys right here, the cameras. So we are going from 2 to 3 cameras. I was kind of taking some pictures around this morning, and I'll take a few over the next couple days to kind of really make sure I get a good idea of the difference of the cameras. But I would say, for one, the big difference is you've got a 48 megapixel now versus 12 on both the cameras, and you've got a lot more processing power that's going into helping out with the processing of the pictures and capturing light, capturing detail, capturing color, all that sort of stuff. There's most of what the pictures are today on smartphones doesn't come from the camera. It really comes from the processing and the software behind the cameras. So really, you're not really paying for an upgraded camera. You're paying for an upgraded processor to process that image in a better way now. But I will say it is really nice, though, with the pictures to now have 24 megapixels as default. You can set it to 12 and you can set it to 48 versus just the 12. And then you've got a lot more zoom range with 48 and 24. And this one's got the 3 cameras, so you got the 3 times telephoto. But I will say this, one of the most impressive features about the 15 Pro now is now you can shoot ProRes, which you were able to do it last year, but now you can shoot ProRes 4K log, which is really interesting. And I'll try to do put up a quick video that I shot on this phone. It was a vertical video, so I'll see how I'll format it, but it's very interesting, very interesting how good of quality the ProRes log footage is on this camera. And it really felt like I was shooting with a real camera, and when I was editing it, when I was color grading, it really felt like a real normal camera. So the log on this is super impressive, and I really like it. I really love the log. The only thing, though, is the file sizes are massive. So I plugged in through a dongle my SD card that I'm using on my camera right now. I had 50 gigabytes left. I plugged it in, and it said I had 4 minutes left of recording in ProRes log. So I don't know if they're just giving headroom. I don't know what it is, but I will say the file sizes are massive. I remember on the clips I was using, the 15-second little clips were like 650 megabytes. Like, that's a big clip. So if you want to shoot ProRes log, make sure you clear your phone and make sure you get the higher storage or the higher SSDs, whatever you want to do. Make sure you've got a lot of storage because it will eat it up very quickly. That's kind of the only downside, though, of ProRes on the iPhones. But man, is it impressive. The video quality is really good. Totally thumbs up there on the video quality. And another new feature this year is this new action button. So iPhones, for all of its existence, has had this mute switch. I don't know if it's more useful or not than just, like, for instance, swiping down and then doing rotation lock, or swiping down and doing the camera or flashlight or whatever it is. I don't know yet. So I think it's going to be one of those things that either people absolutely love and it's a total game changer and they use it all the time, or it's going to be kind of like a set it, forget it kind of a thing, and maybe use it again every couple months here and there when you think about it. So I don't know, is it going to be like 3D Touch, which to be fair, I loved 3D Touch. I thought it was one of the best things Apple ever did, and then they got rid of it. Or if it's going to be like Face ID and it just becomes a new thing that everybody actually loves. So I don't know. So this leads me to, I think, the biggest key difference between these two phones. In the big question, should I upgrade? I think what was really interesting about when the 11 came out was this was the first time that I really heard a lot of other YouTube reviewers really start to rave about the power of the processor in this. This has one of the should have looked it up before the video, but it's an A something processor. It's one of the Apple Silicon processors, as they've had pretty much for most of the iPhones. But this thing was fast. Like, this thing had a lot of headroom, like way too much headroom in terms of power and performance when this thing came out. I can edit 4K videos, no problem. I use CapCut for Instagram videos with captions. I do that all the time, and not even once has this thing chugged out on me. In day-to-day use, this thing, like, Granted, now that I see the ProMotion display and I'm used to that after the week, the display totally feels like jittery. But never once has this phone lagged on me. Never once has this phone felt slow or sluggish at all. Like anything I needed to do on this, I totally had confidence that I could do it, whether it's editing 4K videos, doing the typical browse the web, take pictures, edit pictures, that sort of thing. And this phone is still, it's 4 years old. And I still don't have problem editing 4K video, editing pictures, any of that stuff. I don't have any problems on this, which I think is a real testament to how capable and how powerful these processors are and how good they have been for the past few years. So when that big question comes up, do I need to upgrade? Honestly, I think in a really interesting twist of events, if you have something like the 11, honestly, unless it really is starting to chug out on you and really lag, I don't think there's really necessarily a need to upgrade because these processors are just still so capable. And honestly, it would not be surprising to me if this thing lasted another 2 years and it still was working good, still was working fine. Obviously, you'll need to replace the battery at some point because the batteries just degrade. But it then asks the bigger question of how much headroom now do we have with these phones? Because this processor is definitely much faster, much more capable than what's in the 11. So now how many years is this phone going to last well because of how much better the processor is? So really, in a lot of ways, in terms of pure functionality and in terms of just use, I don't think most of the new iPhones, unless you are coming from a 12 or older, I don't think most of the new iPhones really are needed to be upgraded to. I did not need to upgrade to the 15 Pro. I did it because I wanted to and because I like the cameras, I like the quality of it, that sort of stuff. It was personal preference. So hopefully that helps you with a bit of an idea if you're on an older iPhone and you're thinking about upgrading and you've been hearing a lot of like, yes, you should upgrade or no, you shouldn't upgrade. Really, I think it comes down to this. If you want it and you can afford it, I say go for it because that's kind of what I did. But being now on the end of upgrading, I realized just how good these 11s are and just how good the older ones are. If you give it a new battery, it'll feel like a brand new phone, minus a few little spec sheet, fun little specs like ProMotion or smaller bezels or a third camera. Besides stuff like that, in terms of the functionality of the phone, it's more or less, sounds weird, but this is just, the 11 is just as good as the 15 Pro, so don't feel like you have to upgrade unless you want to and unless you have the money. So that's kind of my comparison, sort of review, sort of whatever, between the iPhone 11 and the 15 Pro. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you'd like to subscribe, feel free to like the video, comment, and if you have any questions, maybe you are on an older iPhone and you have some questions about the new ones, maybe some specific questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below. I'll be down there for a good little while and hanging out with you guys. So thanks for watching. I'll see you whenever I make another video, whenever that might be. But for now, have a great day. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.